So this week, North Korea detonated another nuclear bomb in a test. It's the fourth one they've exploded. North Korea says it was a hydrogen bomb, which is much more powerful than a regular atomic bomb. Now, this wasn't supposed to happen. See, under Bill Clinton, the U.S. negotiated with North Korea to get them to abandon the nuclear weapons program. Clinton sent his Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, to cut a deal with the North Koreans. It wasn't a formal treaty, the kind that the U.S. Senate has to approve. It wasn't even a binding executive agreement. It was the loosey-gooseyest deal possible. Even its name, the Agreed Framework, was so pitiful and weak. But Clinton was so desperate to get some deal, any deal, so he caved on everything, gave North Korea pretty much whatever they wanted. Most importantly, political legitimacy. The Agreed Framework normalized the country, ended its status as a pariah state. Imagine how dispiriting it would have been for ordinary North Koreans to see the top diplomat of the United States sitting next to their totalitarian leader, Kim Jong-il, smiling and approving of him. It would be the last flicker of hope going out for these North Koreans. Oh, and Clinton gave billions of dollars worth of concessions to North Korea too, including millions of barrels of oil a year. Just listen to how naive Albright was. Here, take a look at this.
Indeed, during the October 23rd mass performance we attended together, an image of the DPRK Taepodong missile appeared. He immediately turned to me and quipped that this was the first satellite launch and it would be the last.
So there she was, 100,000 North Korean slaves, really, at a command performance for the dictator for life. It's all military themed, it's all soldiers and weapons. And she believed him when he said he didn't really mean it, that there would be no missiles, no nukes. Yeah, well, that didn't last long. North Korea broke the deal, of course, the deal that wasn't even a real deal. About no more missiles? Yeah, a few years later, in 1998, North Korea was sending missiles over Japan. But Albright and Clinton were so desperate to keep their non-deal deal alive, North Korea knew it could do pretty much anything and get away with it year after year. I mean, what kind of second-rate negotiators did America send? Just awful, so gullible. So now North Korea has nukes and missiles and uses them at will. Who knows how many more nukes they have in storage and who they'd be willing to sell them to for cash. If Iran offered North Korea $1 billion or $5 billion for one nuclear bomb, do you doubt they'd sell them one? Hey, speaking of Iran, they're pretty much following North Korea's negotiation plan to a T, aren't they? Negotiating a non-treaty treaty, non-binding, not reviewed by the U.S. Senate. They get tons of cash from America. They don't really have to give up their nukes. They refuse to give up their missiles. The Iranian leadership gets lots of photo ops with John Kerry and his chief Iran negotiator, Wendy Sherman. Again, imagine how dispiriting it must be to be an Iranian democracy activist and to know that the U.S. is treating their dictatorship as a legitimate government. So frustrating. And do you remember that naive speech by Madeleine Albright more than 20 years ago? Well, listen to this little speech made a few months ago by Wendy Sherman, right after the U.S. made a non-deal deal with Iran over nukes, just like with Korea. Here she is. She's the chief negotiator.
So at the end of it, Secretary Kerry, completely impromptu, said, "When I was 22, I went to war." And then he choked up, sort of like I did a few minutes ago. He couldn't get the words out. And everybody was completely spellbound. And he sort of got his voice and said, "I went to war, and it became clear to me that I never wanted to go to war again." That's what this was all about, trying to settle these matters through diplomacy and peaceful means. And it was such a moving moment that everybody in that small room applauded, including the Iranian delegation, and everyone had tears in their eyes.
Look at her. She's an emotional wreck, just like John Kerry is. They truly believe they have brought peace with their non-deal deal that pays Iran billions, that lets them keep their uranium and their centrifuges and lets them start building bombs again in a few years. But she's so pleased with herself and her boss, just like Madeleine Albright was in the non-deal deal that let North Korea build a bomb. But hey, did you notice something about Wendy Sherman? That striking look she has, that shock of white hair and the modern suits. Hey, just for a second, can you put back up on the screen again the footage of Madeleine Albright at that meeting room in Korea more than 20 years ago? Who's that sitting next to Albright? Well, that's her. That's Wendy Sherman. Can you put up that stadium footage again? Look who's sitting right up there with Kim Jong-il and Albright. It's Wendy Sherman. The very same chief negotiator who sold out America and let North Korea get nukes. One of the worst failures in American diplomacy since the Cold War. One of the worst nuclear proliferation disasters ever. It was overseen by Wendy Sherman, who is now in charge of the Iran deal too. Can you believe it? She's not a negotiator. She's a conceder, an appeaser, a compromiser, a surrenderer. She's not even a professional diplomat. She's a social worker by profession who did some work in child welfare later. That's her background. You can sort of tell she's about emotions and feelings and everyone in a room getting in touch with each other. The North Koreans ate her alive in the 90s, and the Iranians are eating her alive today. North Korea detonated a nuke this week. That nuke has Wendy Sherman's name on it, the Democratic Party's name on it, Hillary Clinton's name on it, or at least Bill's. And the same team, Sherman and Hillary Clinton and their old friend John Kerry, are now working hard to give Iran a nuke too. For TheRebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.